It's very important to understand the normal sane Republican Party that Maricopa County and the state of Arizona used to have, and that's saying a lot right there, is no longer. It is about 95% MAGA cult and only 5% one we consider traditional Republican. And so if you are going to get out of the primary in the state of Arizona, you either got to be MAGA or forget it.
Welcome to Law and Chaos. Today, we're joined by Arizona trial lawyer Tom Ryan to talk about the indictment of 11 fake electors and 7 Trumpland henchmen in the plot to steal the state for Donald Trump in 2020. With the Georgia RICO case looking shakier by the day, we'll talk about the comparative strength of the Arizona charges. Plus, we'll discuss the Arizona GOP's apparent effort to turn that state blue. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get after it. Hey, Chaos Monkeys. I'm very excited for today's deep dive into Arizona politics and law. But first, a brief dispatch from the Trump trial in New York. Remember that Donald Trump is under a gag order barring him from commenting on the witnesses and jurors in his criminal case. There was a contempt hearing on Tuesday on the first batch of potential violations, since Trump thinks he's allowed to repost other people attacking Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels, and somehow that doesn't count. And there's another contempt hearing scheduled for this Thursday. And then
vitriol, there's a Trump derangement syndrome, and it's blinding lawyers, it's blinding jurors, and it's affecting judges. Their Soros backing and political affiliations should have no part in the court, but I've seen time and time again that it does. So, my comment, while the left-wing media would like to take it out of context, is the truth, which is that President Trump has done absolutely nothing wrong. He should win. And if he's given a fair jury, if he's given a fair court, if he's not in Manhattan, which is a completely blue state where they only polled blue state members of the jury on purpose, well, that's a different game. But to say that, if I said here that I think everything's perfect, well, I'd be completely hypocritical. As I've said for the last 3 years, this is a witch hunt. The president is under siege. The American people are under siege. And if we don't change the judicial system, if we don't get rid of this lawfare in place of politics, the American people are going to suffer.
Oh, Manhattan is a blue state now, is it? Cool. I mean, look, it does have 3 times the population of Wyoming, so sure, it stands to reason that it should have 2 senators and 2 reps. I am in favor of this. No argument here. No, but in all seriousness, I would bet that the prosecution is going to file another show cause motion demanding that this be added to the list of violations of the existing gag order. For comparison, they've asked that Trump be held in contempt for saying last week that Justice Merchan is, quote, rushing the trial like crazy. Nobody's ever seen a thing go like this. That jury was picked so fast, 95% Democrats. The area is mostly all Democrat. You think of it as a just purely Democrat area. And look, let's check that language of the gag order. It bars Trump from making or directing others to make public statements about any prospective juror or any juror in this criminal proceeding. And, obviously that's a statement about the jurors. And Haba is not only his lawyer, but she's the legal spokestork for his Save America PAC. So I think he's going to be hard-pressed to argue that she's not an agent working at his direction. I mean, we're only talking about $1,000 a pop at this point. We discussed it, I think, in the last episode. It's $1,000 per violation, although that penalty can go up. And okay, it's peanuts compared to what Haba's already cost him. I mean, she did earn him $1 million in sanctions in the RICO case against Hillary Clinton, and $464 million in the civil fraud case. So $1,000 isn't a lot, but on the other hand, it's not great. Okay. As I have said, we are changing up the format here, and I expect we're going to get closer to that new format on Friday. And I hugely appreciate all your support. We've had a lot of new listeners in the past few days since the Friday show, and I appreciate that. So we're working through on Patreon and Substack, and I'd like to shout out everyone here since, look, we're, just 3 months into the show, and you guys have been great to me. So from Substack, thank you to Benjamin, Isaiah, Geraldine, Thanio of Fife, Salvador, John W., Sean, David, Steve, Stan, Mike, Caesar, Justin, Donna, MJMB, Nell, Beand, Dr. Debbie, Sharon, Alex, and Emphalme. I hope I got that right. And from Patreon, thank you to Surfer Rugby Player Lawyer in that order, an old friend, new again, Chad, Brandon, Viola, Roger, Tracy, Karen, Reed, Aaron, Jobu, Fraud Fishy Hates Everything, Omega Symbol, David, Charles, Kristen, Diane, Sean, Jim, Kitty, Isabella, Basement Matt, and Walt D. Thank you guys so much. Subscribers on either platform get the show ad-free every time, and we'll get more goodies as we ease into this new format. And if you would like to become a subscriber, head on over to lawandchaospod.com, which is Substack, or patreon.com/lawandchaospod. If you are a subscriber, let's get right to the show. And if not, we will see you back here in a minute after we pay some bills. And with me today is Tom Ryan. He's a trial lawyer in Arizona who has handled many high-profile political cases, ranging from the Speaker of the House, Arizona Attorney General, Senate President, and Secretary of the State. And today he is back with us on Law and Chaos to talk about last week's indictment of 11 fake electors and 7 Trump world henchmen for attempting to steal the state's electoral votes for Donald Trump in the last election. Thank you so much for being back.
Oh, thanks for having me back.
All right, so let's just get right to it. What did these people get indicted for?
Well, trying to steal election in general terms, but specifically what they were indicted with, conspiracy, a Class 2 felony, fraudulent schemes and artifices, another Class 2 felony, fraudulent schemes and practices, a Class 5 felony.
Artifices. Only lawyers would write that.
Yeah, forgery, Class 4 felonies. And so there are 11 named people who are indicted, and then we played a guessing game as to the other 7, but everybody's pretty much figured them out now.
Right. Well, I noticed that on Friday. So the indictment came out on, I think it was Thursday, and then Kris, your Attorney General, said we're not going to name these 7 people because they're out-of-state defendants and they have not yet been served. Although one of them was like the mayor, which I pretty much think anybody can figure out was Rudy Giuliani. Then the next day, I think Friday, she put out a less redacted indictment. It had 2 redacted names. One was Mark Meadows and one was Rudy Giuliani, but not hard to figure out who those people were. So now it's out there. It's Meadows, Giuliani, Boris Epshteyn, Jen Ellis, Christina Bobb, John Eastman, and which one did I forget? Mike Roman.
Roman. That's right. Mike Roman. I forgot. I'm embarrassed.
No. Mike Roman is the one who's made all of that. He's the one, he was the Republican Oppo researcher who he was indicted in Georgia. And he's the one who kicked up all of the information about Fani Willis's relationship with the now former special prosecutor, which we'll come back to because this is an interesting comparison between these 2 cases. But okay, so these guys were all indicted for their scheme to steal the electors.
Correct. And the interesting thing is, they filmed it. They filmed their crime. Most people have the good sense not to do it, but they thought they were making history, but instead they were filming their crime. I mean, this is the dumbest gang this side of the Pecos River.
Yeah. So what exactly did they film?
Well, what they did was they lost. Okay. They lost the Electoral College vote. And so they gathered together. These are the same Republican electors that had been slated for Trump. And they got together and they, with the aid and instruction of the chair of the Arizona Republican Party who participated in this, and they signed a false statement, a certificate. And everybody signed it and sent it. They sent it off to Andy Biggs to give to Vice President Michael Pence to show that, well, we have a, quote, alternate set of electors, which really are just fake electors because they didn't win the vote. This is what they did.
Right. It was so obvious. I remember, part of what kicked off this whole Dominion thing was that Fox News, their data guys on election night were like, there's no way. There's no way Trump is going to win Arizona. Trump has lost Arizona. And they called it. And then Trump flipped out. And the kind of the course correction at Fox, because their viewers were so pissed off at being told the actual truth, is what led to that $787 million settlement with Dominion.
Yes. Let me just diverge for just 10 seconds here or less. Arizona elections are safe and secure. Phoenix is like the 5th largest metropolitan area in the United States. It's a massive city. It is a high-tech hub. We have things like Microsoft and Intel and Northrop Grumman and GM and Ford and all these. The elections that we run here are so sophisticated, safe, and secure that the idea that somebody is manipulating these elections is just silly. And we had the ones that were in charge. We had a Republican governor, a Republican attorney general. We had a 4 out of 5 Republican Board of Supervisor members from Maricopa County, where Phoenix is,
Right.
and they all were satisfied and certified the election. There's a great little clip out there floating around in the internet of Governor Ducey the moment he's getting ready to sign the certification that Biden won Arizona. His cell phone rings, and it's playing "Hail to the Chief," which that's only one person it could be. He later told us that was the president of the United States, Donald Trump, who was trying to influence him at the very last second. Elections in Arizona are safe and secure.
And there were a lot of consequences for Ducey doing that. I mean, you arguably, we've talked about it on the last time you were on the show, right? Ducey signed the certificate, and then he got crosswise with Donald Trump, and Donald Trump was mad at him and was mad at Mark Brnovich, who would have been a really credible Senate candidate the last go round, but wasn't.
It's very important to understand the normal, sane Republican Party that Maricopa County and the state of Arizona used to have, and that's saying a lot right there, is no longer. It is about 95% MAGA cult and only 5% one we consider traditional Republican. And so if you are going to get out of the primary in the state of Arizona, you either got to be MAGA or forget it. And that's what happened to Mark Brnovich.
Right. Brnovich was the Secretary of State. He was a loyal Republican. He pissed off Trump because he certified the actually credibly done election results. And he got kneecapped in the primary, and he lost the Senate primary to Kari Lake. And Doug Ducey didn't get in any primary because Trump was pissed off at him. And, arguably the state would have, I mean, I don't think anybody, you would know better than I do, but I think Mark Kelly was probably always going to win. But, this didn't have to go this way. They didn't have to get swept out of office pretty much completely, Republicans.
Right. No, this is been considered a solid red state. The Republicans still outnumber Democrats by a large majority, but the problem is they run so many crackpots that even normal Republicans go, I ain't voting for you. And so they lose a lot of the Paradise Valley, Scottsdale, Tucson Republicans that are normal, what they call country club Republicans. A lot of independents now, the largest registration in the state of Arizona. So, yeah, if you're going to go MAGA and you're going to do all this election denial stuff, you can kiss the rest of Arizona. You'll get your MAGA vote, but you're not getting anything else.
Yeah, it's like a duel between your state's Republican Party and the Michigan state's Republican Party to turn a 50-50 state blue. Right, like Michigan's Republican Party is crazy. I mean, you've got Chemtrail Kelly, so you do have a running start.
Our Republican Party here is just amped up on monster caffeine drinks, and they're determined to outdo Michigan Republican Party in terms of craziness. We're not out of the race.
No, you're definitely not out of the race. So actually, I mean, we can talk about that. One of the indictees, one of the fake electors, is a state senator named Jake Hoffman. He's a state senator, right? He's not in the House.
Correct.
And he was last night named, was it party chair? This weekend named party chair?
Well, let me go through that. Yeah, first off, Jake Hoffman is associated with something called Turning Points USA. It's the Charlie Kirk crazy. We're going to drive all the Republican teenagers into MAGA zombies. He is part of that group. He got elected as state senator. He got kicked off of Twitter because he was so crazy to the right. But at any rate, he got elected, and he was part of the fake electors. He's indicted, and then yesterday, he was named and elected as a Republican National Committeeman for the upcoming presidential nomination this summer for the Republican Party. And his running mate is just as loony as he is. It's a lady named Liz Harris, who was kicked out of the state legislature by her own fellow Republicans because she accused all the fellow Republicans of being part of the Mexican cartel. And yet, here she is. She's now going to be the other representative this summer at the Republican National Party.
Right. And Kelly Ward is still the party chair. Is she still party chair?
No. That Kelly Ward stepped aside,
Oh, I
and they
see.
had a guy named Jeff DeWitt, who Jeff is actually. They thought Jeff would be a good bridge between normal Republicans and MAGA Republicans, and Jeff was too much of a wheeler dealer guy, unfortunately, and he basically was telling Carrie Lake at a dinner, hey, you ought to step aside. I've got friends who can get you some really nice jobs. Let's get somebody else in here. So
To run for
Carrie
Senate.
Lake was very offended. Yeah. And so when it came time to reelect the chair for the Arizona Republican Party this January, Carrie Lake let that little video out.
Mm-hmm.
It sunk Jeff DeWitt's candidacy as the GOP chair. And in comes a lady named Gina Swoboda, Swoboda.
Mm-hmm.
Gina is a lawyer, and she is God's right-hand warrior. I tell you, that's not my words. Those are her words. And she is a Christian dominionist nationalist. She is going to make school prayers lovely again. She's having a problem. They are bankrupt here nearly. They have to sell their Republican headquarters, and all the traditional donors are saying, you guys are too crazy. We're not helping you.
Wow.
So that's where we are.
I mean, I'm not mad about it. Like as a Democrat, I'm not. It doesn't make me mad. But okay, let's go back to this indictment a second, because I understand what the electors are indicted for. What are the Trump henchmen indicted for?
They are part of the conspiracy. Mm-hmm. Now, again, that part of the conspiracy wasn't filmed, but it was deeply involved with emails, text messages, and the like, which our Attorney General Kris Mayes has. For example, there are emails going back and forth between a young attorney here, Jack Walenchik, and John Eastman and Boris Epshteyn, where they're talking about what do we call these electors, and they were calling them the fake electors, and Jack famously said, no, let's call them alternate electors. So they're what all this email exchange is between these 7 people and the attorney is that they know what they're doing is false. They know it's fake. And then, Jack comes in and says, whoa, we can't call them fake, even though they are fake. So again, you don't send an email to the bank before you intend to rob it and say, dear teller, please have all your cash ready. I'm going to be down there at 10 o'clock with a gun. I would very much like you to just hand it over to me. Maybe that's the high-tech way of robbing a bank these days.
Right.
But it isn't going to be very effective.
Walenchik, am I correct that his father, is his father Dennis?
Yeah, his father is Dennis. Dennis is a longtime Republican activist here in the state of Arizona.
And aren't they involved in some of the Mike Lindell, Carrie Lake litigation as well?
Absolutely, they are. Dennis Walenchik famously represented Alan Dershowitz in U.S. District Court in front of John Tucci out here in Arizona. They filed a complaint saying that we demand that Arizona uses paper ballots.
Oh, that was the Carrie Lake lawsuit. Dershowitz was a lawyer on that case, right?
He was one of the lawyers, and he said, well, and Judge Tucci said, this is nonsense. Everything you're saying is just frivolous. Arizona does use paper ballots, and they don't use voting machines. They use tabulators after the ballots are marked. There is no factual basis for this. There's no legal basis for this. So we are going to impose sanctions on these attorneys, including Alan Dershowitz, who came in as pro hoc vice. And he's saying, well, I wasn't the counsel. I was of counsel. Here's a guy who's from Harvard. He says he doesn't know the difference between counsel and of counsel. Sure, right. Judge Tucci didn't bite in it, and they've appealed the sanctions to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. The Supreme Court just rejected their underlying appeal. The Ninth Circuit's not going to treat them any better on these sanctions. Dershowitz is going to get sanctioned, and he may get sanctioned more because even the defense of his sanctions was frivolous. But yes, right. Dennis Walenchik was the attorney. Dennis jumps into a lot of cases that you look at and go, for the love of all that's holy, what are you thinking? And now he's got Jack in this. I will say this, and I think this is one of the reasons why Jack did not get indicted is, sadly, this young man, putting aside all politics and everything else, is got a very bad case of some unknown cancer, and they don't expect him to live long. But at any rate, he's the one that said, no, and he put a little winky smiley face at the end of it. Let's not call them fake electors. Let's call it alternate electors, winky face.
Yeah. So I remember when those emails came out because they were published by the New York Times. Were those emails that came out? This is a little weedsy, but were those emails that came out under the litigation over John Eastman's emails, or were those emails that came out some other way?
I think they came out through the January 6th committee from the Congress.
I see. Yeah,
Correct.
because I'm quite sure that they weren't given by Jack Wilenchik to the New York Times.
Let me just say the Jack Wilenchik email was a bombshell for Arizona. I mean, we all knew this was fraudulent. We knew this was fake. But when you got the actual seminal, hey, let's not call these fake electors, let's call them, alternate electors, that was big.
Yeah, and in that tranche of emails were Epshteyn and Eastman talking. I think it was like on Christmas Eve about how they were going to, how there would be rioting in the streets. And they acknowledged in these emails that they had this kind of drifting plan. Right, the first plan was that the electors would change because a state court would change them or a state legislature would change them, and then when none of that happened, they decided, well, we'll just kind of go for it, and maybe the mob will scare Congress into accepting the fake slates of electors.
There was a lot, let me tell you something. There was a lot of pressure on elected Republican officials who were responsible for overseeing this election. Mm-hmm. So, for example, the Speaker of the House at the time was a very conservative Republican Mormon by the name of Rusty Bowers. If you talk to Rusty on his political views, I would guarantee you would disagree 98% of everything that he said. Mm-hmm. But much to Rusty's eternal credit, Rusty stood tall when Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump called him to get him to change the votes. Rudy Giuliani very famously said in the recorded conversation, look, Rusty asked him, well, what is your evidence for this? He says, well, we don't have evidence. We're looking for that still, but we've got a lot of good theories. You don't overturn an election on theories. Mm-hmm. Yesterday, one of the indicted electors came out and said, well, we're being indicted because there were dueling opinions about which one was the legitimate slate of electors. No, there wasn't. There were no dueling opinions, and even if there were, dueling opinions is not how we elect our president. If you believe something went wrong, you don't create a set of fake electors. What you do instead is you go have an election contest in court. That's the difference, and this is why they're now indicted.
Right. So actually, that's a good place for us to talk about Christina Bobb, who was up in this. And right, I mean, because she was so intimately involved in the recount, which was, those cyber ninjas. I mean, I'm sure most people remember that Arizona had this recount that was like by this obviously unqualified, completely MAGA forensic accounting firm out of Florida. I think it was out of Florida, called Cyber Ninjas. And
Cyber Ninjas.
Right. And Christina Bobb, even as she was purporting to cover it for One America News that she was an anchor for, she was raising money to support it, right? And so people like Patrick Byrne and Michael Flynn, all of these election denying figures, raised a lot of money to do this, and it took 6 months, and they, it was clearly not done properly. There were all of these people who were like, you're doing this wrong, all of this is now tainted, but they even came out with saying, yeah, Biden definitely still won.
In fact, they found more votes than actually for Biden. This is crazy. So let's talk about Christina Bobb, and then I want to talk about Cyber Ninjas because that's some high quality humor at really low bargain prices.
Yeah.
Christina Bobb was a triple purpose kind of Swiss Army knife triple action lady
she's
here.
Amazing that she's got so many jobs because I've never noticed her to have that many brain cells. Like, I mean, God bless, the girl is not that bright.
Well, apparently in the law school she went to, under ethics, conflicts of interest wasn't properly taught. However, so she involves herself as an attorney in the election denying conspiracy, providing legal advice on how to cheat the system. Then she pretends that she's an independent journalist working for OAN News Network, yeah. And then she's actively fundraising to fund all of this. She deserves, in Dante's Divine Comedy, down in the rings of hell, she's down in about the 9th ring of hell, frozen in the excrement down there, because she really was a bad actor. Yeah. But the Cyber Ninjas deserve a special treat here. One, they had never done anything like this. Two, this guy had the IQ of an empty beer can. Three,
Oh,
he
you're talking about
wasn't
Doug
a
Logan, the guy in charge of cyber
Doug
ninjas.
Logan.
Yeah.
Oh, and he was the master of spreading theories. Oh my God, there were Chinese bamboo threads, and then there weren't any. Oh
Remember,
well.
they were shining UV light on the ballots to see if they had like bamboo threads, because that would indicate that they were like fake Chinese ballots. That was so. I mean, they don't have paper in China. Why would China even? But then, I mean, it's ridiculous on its face. But why would there be?
Why would China
bamboo
want
in
Joe
there?
Biden?
Right.
Just,
I mean, it just none of it makes any sense.
and here's the best part about it. When they realized how big the job was, I think they thought they could do it in the Board of Supervisors conference room. They
Right.
had to take out the Veterans Memorial Coliseum, which is where the Phoenix Suns used to play, and they still didn't have enough room. But the funny thing about it was that was on the Arizona Fairgrounds, and right outside the Cyber Ninjas, accounting was a big circus, and it was, I mean, clown acts, fat
I
lady.
didn't realize that.
It was the perfect juxtaposition. What's the real circus here? But at any rate, here's the better part of that. One of the indicted co-conspirator, one of the indicted guys, Senator Mark Kern, who is just Anthony Kern, rather, who's just a wackadoo of the highest order. He participated in the January 6th riot at Congress. Okay, he was there on the Capitol building. He got elected to the state Senate, but he was also, because it was in his election, he was allowed to be one of the counters at the Cyber Ninja. How do you do that? Again, conflict of interest doesn't matter to these guys.
It was a total clown show. And, to the extent that any of the numbers coming out of it are reliable, and I think that they're not, I wouldn't trust any of those numbers. They confirmed the win and even, found a handful of extra votes for Biden. That has not stopped anybody from saying that the election was stolen. They've just kind of moved the bar.
If you watch any of the Good Liars, you can see that they do a great job of confronting MAGA people, and you can show them the evidence that, A is the letter A and it's not the letter Z, and they still will go, no, I still believe it's the letter Z. You can show them anything you want to about Trump. It's like dealing with an Amway salesman. They'll figure a way to jump over your argument and keep moving on because they're going to get you sold on it. So that's the way these guys are.
Okay, so let's talk about Trump, because he's not in here, right? He's an unindicted co-conspirator, but he's not in here.
Correct. And that's one of everybody's just laughing. Unindicted co-conspirator, former president of the United States. Like, who doesn't know who that unnamed, unindicted co-conspirator is? But this is part of the clever stuff. As if you've seen in every other case where Trump has been involved, he's been a master at gumming up the works and slowing it down, including for his co-conspirators. I think it is a simple stroke of genius on behalf of Kris Mason and her staff that they did not bring Donald Trump in, because all of the arguments that he would have as a former president aren't going to play out in this particular case. And so that helps speed up the process here. So I thought, as opposed to Georgia, where they have brought him in, he's not going to get that kind of we don't have to worry about it here in Arizona.
You're not going to have the immunity arguments and the removal arguments and all the rest of that took up all that time.
Correct. Now, keep in mind, the statute of limitations is he can, just because he's unindicted now doesn't mean he can't be indicted later. People flip. I can see Mark Meadows doing it. We certainly see John Eastman, Jenna Ellis. There's a lot of people who could flip and say, I'm just done with this.
Okay, so let me just back you up. How long is the statute of limitations? How long is there left for Attorney General Kris Mays to charge Trump?
The total statute of limitations is 7 years, so 7 years from January 6th of 2021. So I would say January 6th of 2028 would be the last day you could indict.
Okay, I'm good with that. I think we've got some time. Okay, so now let's talk about, because clearly somebody flipped here already, and that somebody is Ken Chesebro. He was one of the lawyers who worked with all of these other lawyers, but he was I want to say the smartest lawyer, and I don't think that that's a big stretch, right?
I think we need to take a time and talk about Chesebro, because he's an interesting character. He had his start under Larry Tribe, who I think everybody would consider an icon of liberal, legal, traditional thought. And, Ken has realized, I really don't understand the trajectory from somebody like Lawrence Tribe, to where he ended up in this whole fiasco. But he's traversed the arc here, and now
I
he
mean,
finds himself in.
I think we both understand. Look, I mean, he was this nerdy lawyer who had no people skills and parked himself in the Harvard Law Library and like churned out briefs, appellate briefs, for Larry Tribe to put his name on for 30 years, and then he made all this money in Bitcoin and like dumped his wife and got a 25-year-old girlfriend. So I mean, I think you and I both know it's neither one of us is like a spring chicken here. I think we all know what happened, and we've known guys like this that like they get a little money and they go a little crazy.
Yes, well, Ken has realized the jig is up. He's already flipped in Georgia. He testified in the grand jury here. He's not even an unindicted co-conspirator here. So by his cooperation, he saved himself. And I think those who raced to the courthouse first, especially those who filmed, their crime, those who cooperate first, roll over first, and write their silly little apology letters will probably come out best.
Yeah, I mean, Chesbrough was the first to flip, right? He was the one. He, along with Sidney Powell, asserted their speedy trial rights because they thought that the DA in Georgia would blink and would not go to trial with them, and that on the eve of trial, he realized that wasn't going to happen, and he was the first to flip. And he got a misdemeanor in Georgia, not a felony.
Correct. And I think you're going to find the same thing will happen here in Arizona. Mm-hmm. But I do think there are some special cases Kris Mayes is not going to offer deals to. You've paid your price. You've won your ticket. You're going to the trial. And I think it's going to be the former GOP chairwoman, Kelly Ward, who really was driving this hard, asking for perp walks, and her husband, Dr. Mike Ward. I also think people like Jake Hoffman and Anthony Kern, who've been out there, these knuckleheads have been out there trying to press release their way out of these charges. Mm-hmm. By the way, never a good idea. Apparently they haven't watched Law and Order and realized you have the right to remain silent.
Yeah, right.
Oh, for the love of all that's holy.
Well, okay, so Christina Bobb is in there, and if you've been following the Florida indictment, she's up in that one too. She was the one who filed that false attestation saying that Mar-a-Lago had been searched for documents bearing classification markings. That was not the case. She also managed not to get indicted in that one by testifying to the grand jury, is my understanding of what happened. I mean, I know she testified. I don't know for sure that's why she didn't get indicted, but she did get indicted here, and also Jenna Ellis, who was that kind of ditzy woman who, I mean, she's one of my favorite characters because she got fired from like her first job as a public defender in traffic court in Colorado, and she went to collect unemployment insurance, and she said, it was denied at first because she'd been fired for cause, and then she challenged it, and the examiner said basically, no, she's like too stupid to be fired for cause. The quote is something like, she was working to the best of her ability, and it's not fair. She wasn't screwing up like 100% of the time, and she's too dumb to be fired for cause. So she won that, and I'm really happy for her. And then she rebranded herself through the right-wing grift mobile as a kind of constitutional law expert. Anyway, so she got indicted here, and she also got indicted in Georgia, and then she pled out. And gave that tearful apology where she said, like, I did not live up to my own ideals as a Christian and a lawyer. And no.
I would expect to see that here in Arizona again with Jenna Ellis and a few of the others. I don't know who's going to defend Rudy Giuliani, given the massive judgment he's got against him and the fact that he's in bankruptcy and he's going to lose all of his condos.
I'm guessing it's going to be the Willenchick family. Look, just who else would it be? Although, it's interesting. So in his litigation against Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, he has this lawyer from Texas. So I don't know who's going to represent him.
Yeah, you can. I guess you can always find somebody to step up. The interesting thing about Boris Epshteyn, who's a lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, Jenna Ellis, John Eastman, Christina Bobb, and then you look at the wackadoos here in Arizona. The guy from Cave Creek who said, well, I'm probably going to get my license yanked for this. And by the way, he did. Yeah. Brian Blem, who's a divorce lawyer representing Carrie Lake. All of the traditional Republican lawyers who typically step up and do election contests and all these kinds of things, they backed away from this big time. So think of companies like Statecraft, Snell and Wilmer, Lewis and Roca, Gus Rosenfeld, all the big Republican law firms in the state of Arizona, They said, you lost and we're not participating. And so they apparently went to the island of the misfits and found.
Yeah, it's been good for me as somebody who writes about it. But can we zero in on something? Because I'd like to talk about the charges. I mean, look, we've all seen Georgia, and Georgia became a hot mess. Like, as a threshold matter, is Attorney General Kris Mayes going to Marcia Clark this case into a mess?
Great question. No, Kris Mayes is a very serious attorney general. And by the way, just 2 seconds, votes matter. She won her election by 280 votes, and it was sustained on appeal to the Supreme Court. And in fact, the other side got sanctioned for their false allegations against Kris Mayes in the election. No, she is not going to Marcia Clark or Fannie.
She's
Fannie
not dating
Willis
one of her
case.
deputies.
No. She's got a dedicated partner. She got a little girl, a daughter. She's chosen very serious lawyers to staff her office. Dan Barr from Perkins Coie, Bill Mundell, who's a former Republican corporation commissioner. She's gone to the best of the best law firms in town to pull out appellate lawyers, and she's getting trial lawyers. She's not like the prior administrations that have gotten sycophants who just come in and say, "Oh, Mark, you're the best," or or Tom Horn, you're the best. Those guys have gotten in big time trouble because they did not have lawyers who acted as guardrails. Kris Mayes, on the other hand, has gotten excellent, outstanding lawyers. No, this will not be a Fannie Willis situation at all, guaranteed.
Right. I mean, I respect Fannie Willis. I think she took a big swing. She took a big political risk. But
yes.
That indictment has been described by our buddy Andrew Fleischman, who is a defense attorney in Georgia, as Baroque, that it's got so many parts and it's got, the RICO and the whole thing. And like, you could have indicted Trump on a false statements charge and been done with it like a year ago. And that's not what happened. He's been pretty critical of Fannie Willis. And this indictment seems fairly straightforward. But I'm going to ask you a question, because we did talk about this before we came on the air. It looks like the big part of this charge is count 2, which is the scheme to artifice or defraud. And it's the one that's the class 2 felony. The class 2 felony is a big one. It's like kidnapping and burglary and arson. And how is this case structured around it? Because what's been difficult both in the federal indictment and in the Georgia indictment is that stealing votes is a hard thing to kind of get your mind around, right? So you're not defrauding somebody out of money, and you're not stealing a thing. You're not stealing a car. And so the fraud statutes sometimes feel like an imperfect fit for this type of a statute. Is it a good fit in the state of Arizona?
Yes, it is. That's a great question, Liz. Let's talk about. I'll help you understand this, because there were two sets of fake electors here. Okay, that's important to understand. So only one of the fake electors got charged. The second slate of electors didn't get charged because it was like, well, they signed a statement that says, in the event that somebody finds that the Biden slate was not real, then we're proposing we're the alternate electors. So they basically didn't certify it as we won the election. They were the ones who actually said we're alternate electors. They're not indicted. In this particular case, between just before the election of November 2020 and the time that they filed the canvass here, or this false certification here, there was a lot of communication back and forth from the national to the local here. There's a lot of pressure, but all of those things have been, emails have been captured, text messages have been captured, voicemails have been captured, letters have been captured. We've got Ginny Thomas talking to Senator Shauna Bollock, who is the wife of Supreme Court Justice in Arizona, Clint Bollock. We've got so much stuff on these guys. Yeah, it's this one, let's just put it this way. The Rudy Giuliani of 35 years ago would love to prosecute the Rudy Giuliani of today. This is a clear-cut case of scheme and artifice to defraud. So, because they documented everything. And the reason they documented is not really well put out in the media yet. They thought they were making history. Well, we want to make sure history knows just exactly what we've done.
I'm confused. If it's such a clean map onto the statute, why would they document? Did they just not understand it? Was it hubris? Like, why would they document it so clearly?
Because the normal Republican attorneys who looked at this and said, you're nuts, and backed away, the normal guardrails said, you're on your own. We're not participating in this. But, attorneys who've been sanctioned, disciplined, and some who've actually been disbarred now. So if that's who you're relying on, it's not a surprise. But they honestly thought they were making history. What's not well spoken out in the rest of the world is that the normal Republican election law lawyers backed away from this, and there were no guardrails. That's what happened here.
Yeah. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. Okay, Tom, can you brass tacks it for me? If this is a serious felony and it is going to stay, this fraud and artifices, are we talking about real time for these people?
Oh, yeah. The presumptive amount of sentencing time for a Class 2 felony is 5 years. Aggravated sentence, that's a lot of time. And an aggravated is 12 and a half years in prison. Now, keep in mind, if you get convicted of 4 felonies, they can be used to aggravate that. So they could be looking for as much as 35 years here, some of these indictees.
So you're saying that the forgery, which is like a Class 4, if I remember, could be the aggravating factor for the Class 2, which is the artifices and fraud.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah, they're looking at anywhere from 3.5 to 35 years. Presumptive is 5. It can get, and if they aggravate it to 12 and a half, they could be looking at 35 years. That's a long time.
That's quite a long time.
A lot of people have been throwing away their lives in support of the crazy orange man, and for the life of me, I cannot figure out why.
All right. Okay. So, what do you think is going to happen going forward, both from a procedural Arizona perspective and from this case perspective? I mean, it looks to me like there's some low-hanging flip fruit.
Yeah, there is some low-hanging flip fruit. That's exactly right. So May 21 is the initial appearance date. So there will be a parade of people in and out of Superior Court in Maricopa County on May 21 for their initial appearances. They'll get photographed. They'll get fingerprinted. So you can look forward to all of that. There won't be a perp walk. They'll be able to bond out. They won't, Kelly Ward, on the other hand, who's now got a yacht out in the Caribbean somewhere, she's going to have a much higher bond because she can flee. And so that's going to be a very interesting one. After May 21, I think you're going to start to see the certain ones flip, like Janet Ellis, I think would. Maybe John Eastman, maybe Mark Meadows. I think you're going to see some people cooperate. And then after that is going to be the discovery and disclosure state where they exchange documents. The state, as you know, has what we call a Brady duty to turn over documents to the defendants. We're going to start seeing more of what the grand jury found in Arizona. We haven't been able to see the grand jury transcripts yet. We don't know who all appeared. But pretty soon, all that's going to become public, and we'll have a very much cleaner and clearer idea of just how bad this really was. I am very confident in Kris Mayes. I guarantee you, she's got this lock, stock, and barrel locked up, and you'll see. I think you'll see some pretty good trials out of this in relatively short order.
Oh, okay. So that's interesting because Georgia has dragged out and looks to be dragging out forever. Why do you think it's going to be faster here, and what kind of timescale are we talking about?
Well, you have to be ready for trial in 150 days. Now you can waive time, but we have a very good trial bench in Maricopa County, especially the criminal trial bench. Keep in mind, Maricopa County does not elect its judges. We go through a merit selection process. Takes a lot of the politics out of getting a judge on the bench. That's number one. That's a difference than Georgia. In Atlanta, they elect their judges. Number two, this is something that the MAGA Republicans do not understand. They think if a Republican governor like Doug Ducey appoints somebody to the bench, we own them. That's how these MAGA Republicans think. What they don't realize is that the judges that are getting appointed to the bench under merit selection understand they're there for the rule of law. They're not there to play favorites. And so all of these people who think, well, gosh, the Arizona Supreme Court, which has been stuffed and stacked by Doug Ducey, they're going to save us. And so far, that hasn't been the case. And the same is going to be true when they find out what they'll find out with the Maricopa County Superior Court judges. Yeah, many of them have been appointed by 13 years of Republican rule, but I guarantee you, they're not there to save them, these indicted co-conspirators, in exchange for damaging their reputation or screwing up their judicial position. Not going to happen.
So that's interesting because that was my next question. Do you think that the bench, I mean, obviously, I think at this lower level, I would have much more confidence in the trial court level, but you don't think that your high court, which as you said, has been, basically stacked by Doug Ducey, right? Didn't Doug Ducey, flip it on purpose, right?
He added two, so he stacked, and then I call it, he stuffed it and he stacked it. Yes.
Right. So, but you don't think that like Bullock, who is Shauna Bullock's husband, so you don't think that Justice Bullock is going to kind of put his thumb on the scale to let these guys off? No.
No. I'll give you an example. One of the stuffed and stacked justices on Arizona Supreme Court is a guy named Bill Montgomery, former Maricopa County attorney, hard right, Goldwater Institute fave. And we just recently had a vote on the whether or not the 1864 abortion law, abortion ban is legal in Arizona or not. And the Planned Parenthood folks said, you ought to recuse yourself, and he did. So, kudos to Bill Montgomery for doing the right thing in that case. So I think, if there's some room to do it, they'll do it, but they're not going to go outside the rule of law to help these people. I am confident in that.
Okay.
This isn't a Clarence Thomas situation.
I cannot believe he sat on that immunity case this week. Right?
Oh,
can you
God.
believe he did not recuse last week on the federal immunity case? But that actually brings me to something I want to ask you, which is, okay, so we watched Mark Meadows try and remove his case to federal court in Georgia and get smacked down by the 11th Circuit. Do you think he's going to try it again here just to kind of buy some more time? Or do you think that he's not going to try it with the 9th Circuit? He's, if he lost in the 11th Circuit, so, and of course, it's not free, right? He's got to pay his lawyers. He's got to pay George Terwilliger to make these frivolous arguments. Do you think that we're going to see that again here?
You might, but it'll be the same result. And now that we have that as a legal precedent, I think it'll be much quicker. One of the things that I've seen with our U.S. District Court here in Arizona, even the ones appointed by Trump, they waste no time. It'll be very quick. So I think, and they've been very, very good on election law issues, criminal issues. I am not worried that our federal court is going to in any way bend over backwards to help Mark Meadows and say, yeah, you're right, you don't belong here in this court.
Okay. So do we have a judge assigned to this at the trial court level, or how soon is that going to be, are we going to be talking about who's on this case?
We will probably find out on Monday. I don't know who the judge is assigned yet. It'll be public on Monday. My brother Tim is a Superior Court judge here. Has done many high-profile cases, and he used to be the associate presiding judge of the criminal bench. He isn't any longer, but he did. He would do in drug cartel cases, murder cases, very, very high-profile cases. This court is a very sophisticated criminal court. It's brand new. It's high-tech. You'll probably be able to watch that. You will be able to watch all the proceedings online.
Oh, wow. So this will be a televised trial.
Yeah, the revolution will be televised. Yes.
All right. Look at you, Arizona. That's great, because not seeing these cases, I think it helps because there is so much lying about them, right? Like, as somebody who has followed these cases minutely, having first of all, I think that it instills confidence in the electorate to be able to watch these cases and to see them. But Trump coming out of the courtroom for all of these trials that he's had in New York and just telling abject lies about it, and then spamming the media with complete lies about what's happened. I mean, he said that in New York, he said that Justice Merchan isn't letting him go to his child's graduation from high school. That's not what happened. He said, I will hold on to this. Let's get back to it. Try not to make us get too far behind, and I'll let you go. But Trump has lied and said, I'm not being allowed to go.
Well, did you see it? Did you see any pictures of Donald Trump with his birthday girl, Melania Trump, this weekend? Because
Oh yeah.
That was part of his sense of distress. No, that's funny stuff. Well, let's talk for a second about the idea of televised hearings, because after the OJ trial and watching Lance Ito and all the machinations there, I think that did a lot of damage to the understanding of how valuable this could be.
Yeah.
However, seeing things like what's going on in Georgia, listening to the oral arguments in the D.C. Court of Appeals, or the oral arguments this last week on immunity in the U.S. Supreme Court, I find those things riveting. I watched, by the way, the John Eastman disbarment proceedings.
Oh my goodness, that was like 3 straight weeks. Well, not straight, but yeah.
It was a very lengthy, very detailed hearing. I thought the hearing officer in that was incredibly generous to John Eastman and his witnesses. Ha ha ha. But I think at least being able to listen in, and better yet, listening and watching in, that improves people's confidence in the judicial system, that it's working fine. So you'll be able to watch them here in Maricopa County.
That is amazing. Okay. So it's good to hear that this is a strong indictment, but like, what the hell took so long? We're almost on the next election and we're still dealing with the last one.
Yeah. Keep in mind, Kris Mayes was only elected at the beginning, in office at the beginning of this year. And so, last year. So it took her a while to get the grand jury up, to get the evidence in. It sat in the prior Attorney General's office, Mark Brnovich, without any real investigation. So kudos to Kris Mayes for working with all deliberate haste and speed, and to get this, what I think is a very solid, tight indictment of these individuals.
Mm-hmm. All right. I feel good about that. All right. So how do you think this is going to play out? Tell us if democracy is safe, at least in Arizona.
Democracy is safe. The rule of law is going to last. It's going to be upheld. To quote the Big Lebowski, there are rules. This is not NAM. So yeah, we're going to be okay.
All right. I'm gonna take that and hold on to that as a little grain of hope going forward. Thank you so much, Tom Ryan.
Thank you.
Law and Chaos Podcast is a production of Epshteyn Media, LLC, is intended solely as entertainment, does not constitute legal advice, and does not form an attorney-client relationship. This show is researched and written by Liz Dye and produced by Bryce Blankenagel. Law and Chaos Pod, copyright 2024, Epshteyn Media, LLC, all rights reserved.